All right. Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we have a special guest joining us. We have Senator Susan Rubio. Susan, how's it going? Thanks for joining the program.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope everyone listening is staying safe, and I'm happy to be here to share a little bit of what I'm doing. Thank you.
Yeah, yesterday, I guess, was the big swearing in for everyone, coming back to the Capitol. I guess, how was it yesterday? I guess being in the Senate chambers, kind of with your new colleagues and I guess the familiar faces and being back in Sacramento.
Well, first of all, it was a little nostalgic for me. I mean, it marks the second year, right? 2 years that I've been in office. But at the same time, I felt really sad for my colleagues. I remember the excitement around my swearing in, my parents being there, just my family witnessing everything in a personal level. And this time they were asked to keep their families away. So it was a little sad moment for me just to see that they couldn't enjoy what I enjoyed 2 years ago.
I guess it's kind of been a hectic time since you've been here in Sacramento, the 2 years. Last year was kind of a race. Not a lot of us have I guess, gotten to know you or your story. Can you kind of give us a little background on you and kind of your journey to Sacramento?
Yes, it's been quite a journey, but well, first of all, a lot of my drive really does come from my upbringing and some of my experiences. What your listeners need to know that, as a young child growing up in Texas, I had been experiencing a lot of discrimination, but I didn't quite understand it. I was 4 years old, 5 years old, and it wasn't until my family was deported when I was 4, going into 5 years old, that it hit me. I did not know I was undocumented. And even as I went to elementary school in Texas, I remember just vividly some of the discrimination I've experienced. For example, teachers would corner me and some of my siblings because they didn't know how to teach us. And I don't blame the teachers. I think back in the 70s, we didn't have enough programs to deal with second language learners, students that didn't speak the language. And so that was difficult. I remember always trying to participate and I couldn't. So going from a little bit of the discrimination I felt in class in Texas, going to being pulled out of school because we were deported, to having to come to California and experience a whole new world. These are some of the moments in my life that sort of shaped where I was going to be in the future. And I think it's important that I tell this particular part of the story. People don't know that I'm a twin. And when we came from being deported, we were deported to Juarez, which is across the border from El Paso. We came to California, and in the 70s, to our detriment, students were tested based on their language deficiency. So they didn't recognize that a child just crossed the border. So if you didn't speak English, that didn't matter. So I just happened to be gifted. I know that as a teacher now. My twin wasn't as lucky. He was a fluent Spanish speaker. At the time, he was deemed mentally delayed because he didn't speak English. And to his detriment, once again, in the 70s, they wouldn't allow you to go to the same school. They would segregate you. So he went to a school with severely handicapped students. And so what happened, he went from being a very smart Spanish speaker to a non-speaker. He was mimicking all the behaviors in school that he saw. And so that just really was that moment, as young as I was. And I realize now that I've been fighting for all my life, and that is to help families like mine. At the time, my parents didn't speak English. They really couldn't help us. And of course, we didn't know any better. So that's where I became a teacher. I really remember just wanting to help at the time, and I couldn't. So I became a teacher. I've been a teacher for 17 years. I'm still a teacher on leave. And through those years, I was such a strong advocate for students, families, and everyone knew that I was a local council member. So naturally, they all started coming to me, asking me for housing, for food, for different things. And I think, I continue to have that need to help others. When I was a council member, you could only do so much because resources are very limited, and you don't have a lot of programs. So I always knew that if I had the opportunity to help families in a larger scale, then I would. And so the Senate became available, and that's how I ended up running for the seat and successfully won the seat. So that's a little bit of my story.
Oh, it's a tremendous story. I didn't even know that. And,
Yes.
talking with your sister, and I've even spent some time with your mother. I've never heard that. That's astounding. I
Yes.
guess when you guys came back to California, I guess what area did you guys live and kind of grow up?
Well, and this is a very popular area because it seems like that's where most of our immigrant families land. It's called Pico Union in downtown Los Angeles. And that's where I grew up until I was in my teens. I went to Belmont High School, it was right in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, and Union Elementary School, which is again Pico Union. And it wasn't a very nice place to grow up. A lot of drugs, a lot of violence, a lot of our friends being shot, and just a lot of the things you don't want a little girl to witness. We just happened to see. But we say this, I think our upbringing and seeing such disparities, such injustices, a lot of gang, a lot of violence, just made us so resilient that we were fighters, and it makes it very difficult to get knocked down and not step right back up, because we've been through so many things in our lives, and we're thankful for the experience. And I think that we're thankful that now makes us stronger legislators, and that we can relate to some of the families that we service, so we can help them in a much personal way.
That's an interesting point you kind of brought up about your twin, and kind of you guys are the same age, you guys came from the same background, but received totally different treatment coming
Yeah.
through the system. Kind of, I guess, how's your twin doing now, and kind of, was he able to overcome these issues, or is it something that
Um,
he's still struggling with today?
yeah. Well, thank you for asking. He's doing great. He's healthy. He has a job, but it really did get in the way of his success. And what I mean by that, he suffered significantly in terms of his self-esteem. He didn't quite recover. He couldn't compete with me, and I feel a little guilty about this because we're twins, and I was not only ahead of him because again, I spoke English a lot faster than he did, but now I know as a teacher myself, I was a GATE student, so I was excelling in everything that I did, and he always found himself trying to catch up to me. At one point, I was 2 years ahead of him. I skipped second grade, and so he just had such a hard time. As soon as he was old enough to make a decision, he dropped out of school and left California. He's lived in Kansas for about 30 years. And
Wow.
so that's really, it's been sad for us as a family, because I feel like, Los Angeles Unified School District failed him. And because of that, I lost my close friend and ally. I mean, we're still very close, but, we're in different states. It's very different when you're not around each other all the time.
No, no, definitely, and a lot of competition there from your sisters and siblings.
Yes.
Very well accomplished. I guess that's something interesting is you and your sister, and I guess your other sisters are very well accomplished, and kind of you just described your upbringing. That, I guess, is that something that's unique, that you guys were able to kind of overcome and kind of accomplish everything that you've done, kind of coming from your backgrounds, and being Latina females, and what you've been able to accomplish. Can you kind of, I guess, speak on that a bit?
It's not necessarily unique, but when I look back at how we grew up, and believe me, we could have been shot any given day. There's so much that we witnessed that, again, we shouldn't be here where we're at. But when I think back, what was the difference? And thinking around what we saw, our friends and neighbors, we had a blessing, and that's that we had a mom and dad. To this day, my parents just celebrated 53 years
Wow.
anniversary this past month. And so when I think back of some of my neighbors and friends, they were, we had single family households. And sometimes, one of the things that my parents did well, and I have to thank them to this day, they didn't trust the system, and they didn't trust strangers. So they never wanted us with babysitters. So they created a system among themselves where my mother would work the day shift. My father always worked the night shift. And so dad would get home, let's say at 6 in the morning, and it was like a tag team. He would mom would hand off, the kids, and then dad would go to work, and it was like a rotation. And so I used to always tell my mother, and she'll say this joking, I say to her, what's your secret to a long marriage, Mom? And she always says, we hardly saw each other. And she says this jokingly, but the one thing she always knew is that she needed to have one parent at home. They didn't trust the system. And I have to say, they didn't speak English. And all they ever said is, you're not playing unless you do your homework. And they were really strong advocates of education, and that's what we did. We make sure we went to school, we got a good education, and that was just a testament to their sacrifice and their hard work.
Right. I guess kind of interesting, you coming up here to Sacramento, talk a little bit about, I guess, about your committee assignments, kind of as the chairwoman of insurance, I guess, kind of where'd your interest come from that, and kind of, you know, what's your background with insurance, and kind of why did you want to be chairwoman of that committee?
Well, and I'll be honest with you, it's not that I wanted to be the chairwoman of insurance, but that comes from my drive to better myself. When I had to sit down with the pro tem and she asked me what I wanted, what was my interest, the one thing I did say to her, I said, I know typically we all gravitate to what we know. And I said, please don't put me on education, because I know education inside out. I want to challenge myself. I want to learn something that's not in my comfort zone. So whatever you're going to give me, make sure that I don't have a background in or full experience, because I really want to expand my knowledge of other areas. And so she, she gave me chair of insurance, and then she knows I work 24/7. I go deep
Wow.
into, statistics, data. I consider myself, a self-proclaimed nerd. I love factoids. I love research, and so it served me well. I've been able to work not only with some of the victims from like our current fires, and to try and find policies that help Californians, especially right now during this time with the wildfires and everything that's happening. So again, I didn't ask for it, but she was kind enough to give me something that would challenge my knowledge and really put me in a space where I could grow and learn as a person.
And so I guess your background in education, are you using that at all, or are you seeking I guess, education policy, or, have you kind of divested yourself from that? And
Oh, no.
in other areas?
Education is in my blood. Like, it will never leave me. And so absolutely. Last year I was able to champion about $10 million. I fought hard to invest $10 million in education to close the achievement gap, is particularly as it pertains to second language learners. And that comes from, again, knowing what happened to my brother. It also supports teachers. I remember when I started teaching, because I spoke Spanish, I always, I was good at it. I was, I think in my personal opinion, the best teacher, because I had come from that background, but teachers struggle with resources. So I wanted to help them. Right now, education, again, continues to be my focus. Right now, I'm working on making kindergarten mandatory in California. A lot of people are surprised to know it's not mandatory.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yep,
My son
that
would like
is,
to know that.
I know people are shocked, but let me just give you a really quick example why I think it's so important. I've done every single grade level. I was also assistant principal and principal at the time. So we have to do all grade levels. And when I was in first grade as a teacher, I had a student that came in. I had never been to school, and they're learning how to hold a pencil. They're learning how to hold a book. And sometimes they haven't even seen a book. And then they're sitting next to a child who's writing full sentences, who are fluent and are reading at a second grade level. And then they're talking about these experiments they did over summer camp. And you start seeing why it's absolutely necessary to have mandatory kindergarten, because by the time they get to first grade, there's already 2-year gap between their education, right? And I know as a teacher that the gap only grows exponentially. If you don't capture kids, or students rather, in third grade, by the time they get to fourth grade, we've lost them. That, K to third grade, that's when you learn the fundamentals of reading and writing. And so right now, that's my focus, trying to make sure that kindergarten is mandatory. So no, I have not divested. I'm still very much involved in education.
Yeah, that's something common we hear about, the importance of early childhood education. I guess, what age is it appropriate, kind of universal TK, to begin this and kind of, begin the education process?
So right now, I'm collaborating with a few senators and a few assembly members to create a package, because sometimes we find that pieces sometimes don't work, and we're hoping to create a full package this year that we can move forward, especially we know the governor has made that a priority. And so right now, I'm co-authoring several bills along with other other senators and assembly members, and that is, as I shared with you, mandatory kindergarten. The other one is expanding transitional kindergarten, because sometimes children get caught in between ages. So for example, if your birthday is after a certain month, they won't accept you. You have to wait until the following year. And so expanding transitional kindergarten, where these children that don't qualify for kinder can go and start early, that's important. We're talking about also, funding support for parents from 0 to 5, to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity. So it's a whole package. It's still early in the working group. We had a press conference this morning about it. It was led by Assemblymember McCarty, and so we're hopeful that we can push this entire package that's going to be very comprehensive, and hopefully we can help capture some of the students that are currently falling behind because of COVID issues, whether it's technology or maybe they don't have the support system at home. I know for a fact as a teacher that even during summer, our students go back up to 2 months if they are not consistently reading over the summer to prepare for the following year. Some of our students have been out practically 3, 4, 5 months, depending on the household. And so this is when it matters. We need to make sure that early childhood education is in place, that we have programs for these students that are going to need some kind of support in terms of tutoring and trying to get them caught up to where they need to be. So yeah, that is one of our biggest focuses this year.
And I guess, this is kind of the season where everyone's coming up with their new bill ideas up until February. Yeah. Kind of what are some of the other issues you're looking to tackle here coming into 2021?
Well, I really have my hand in a lot of things. And so I just kind of want to go backwards a little too. When I came to the Senate, I think it's well known, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. So I did say, I was going to tackle some policies that are going to strengthen support systems for victims. And so the first year I passed the Phoenix Act, which would extend the statute of limitation to victims. Typically here in California, victims had up to 3 years to really go to therapy and find their courage to speak up and bring their abusers to justice. And so 2019, I was able to extend that to 5 years. So we gave them 2 extra years to be able to do so. I also passed SB 1141 last year, which is, just it's really monumental in that it's never been done before. We were able to extend the definition of domestic violence to include coercive control. I think people always think that abuse means a bruise in your arm, a black eye. Even when you go to court, judges expect you to show your evidence in terms of the black eye and the bruise or broken bones. But I think what people fail to understand is that abuse, the physical assault, happens after years and years of manipulation. When I talk to victims, and I have talked to so many throughout this journey, they talk about, their significant others, intimate partners, locking them up, not allowing them to see their families or friends. They take their finances away so they don't have a support system. One victim shared that the intimate partner ruined her credit because she wanted to leave, and he knew that she couldn't get an apartment if she didn't have good credit. So they use all these tactics that really basically entrap victims in a situation that they don't want to be in. And so now, based on my bill that passed last year, and it'll become law in January, victims can now take coercive control as supporting evidence to court and bring their abusers to justice, not just on the physical assaults, but also all the manipulation that happened throughout the years.